A recovered alcoholic, my name's Tony. I'd like to welcome everybody to Friday Night Big Book Study Workshop with a program of recovery laid out by the first 100 men and women in our basic text. How we open this meeting is with the Serenity Prayer. You're going to need it by the time this meeting's over. Yeah. I've been to a couple of meetings this week. What are you guys going to need for a good meeting? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right. For those here coming here looking for something to debate about, you won't be disappointed. Those looking for a resentment, I guarantee you'll have one by the end of the meeting. For those looking for a bit of hope, you're going to get some today. How many people here has relapsed? So, how many people here hasn't relapsed? You probably don't understand the question. So, has everybody here relapsed? Yes. Right on. Well, yeah. There's such unfortunates. They're not at fault. So, they seem to have been born that way. So one of the things we're going to look at today, what we do in this Big Book Study Workshop is why it was put together a little over 19 years ago. This is the second one I put. The first one was put on was in the Burnaby Fellowship, and that was going up until they moved, and that continued there probably close to 25 years on a Friday night. This was put together a little over 19 years ago, and it's Tuesday and Friday nights now, and we get quite the group. We get quite the rotation of people going through here. It's probably one of the biggest Big Book Study workshops in Canada. And what makes it that way is people who've gone through this help other people in return. We've got the worksheets. You show up here at 6. If you're looking for a solution, there's people here that will take you through it by understanding what the problem is, by understanding what the solution is, and the course of action that these people took to bring about this result. One of the biggest problems in our fellowship is most people don't know what they're talking about. And they spend great lengths proving it when they share. Right? I was one of those people. I spent 11 years in and out of the fellowship thinking I understood what the steps were, thinking I understood what I needed to do to recover, thinking that I had this thing, and I kept on relapsing. And each time I came back, I really thought it was different this time. Anybody? Because I meant it this time. All the other times I was a little confused about what was going on. But this time, boy, I made some sweet promises in the past, but this time I meant business. I think one of our founders talked like that, didn't he? And then we'd get everybody around us believing what we were believing, that it was never going to happen again. And did anybody ever relapse? Yep. So, this week I've been to about 3 meetings, and they were talking about step 2. You know how many people talked about step 2 at those 3 meetings I've been to? No. One person. One person actually talked about step 2. Most people have no idea what this course of action is up on the wall, because what they do is they listen to the fellowship talk about something that's up on the wall, and what they do is they gather their information from other people that they're listening to, and they'll share their experience, not their own. They'll share what they heard from one meeting at another meeting. And then the new people will hear those 3 people share, and they said, oh, this is what it must be. And none of them will be able to show you where they get their information from. So next time you hear somebody that really sounds like they know what they're talking about, say, wow, that sounded good. Can you show me where that is in the book or where you get your understanding from? That'll probably be the last time you talk to them. Right? Because my sponsor, the guy that saved my life, walked up to me after 11 years of in and out. I did 360 meetings in 90 days. I got a 3-month chip. I just turned 27 years old. And man, I had it going on. I remember talking at that meeting about letting it go, surrendering, acceptance, and my relationship with God, my relationship with my girlfriends, my jobs, and the promises were coming true. And life couldn't have been better. It was all focused on how the great and powerful Oz, me. It was self-based recovery, but I didn't know that. An hour later, I was drinking. This is after 11 years. I came out here to re-straighten my life out. I came out here in 87. Vomiting green bile, dying of alcoholism. In 89, somebody 12-stepped me for the first time in 11 years in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they actually conned me into this thing. They conned me into it. I didn't see the benefit of doing this. They said, hey, Tony, you've been around a while. I said, yeah. Almost proud of the fact. I talked in great lengths on subjects I had no knowledge of, but the people around me didn't know that either because we were all agreeing. I was surrounded by people who thought like me. You know those meetings? You never see newcomers talk to newcomers. I really like what you had to say, and the other person said thank you. And the old timer goes, what the hell are they saying? You know what those meetings are, right? So George would walk up to me after I relapsed, and he was trying to get me into this big book study. And I didn't see the benefit of doing it because it was on a Tuesday night, and that was my that was my home group night. It was 27. It's like the Sunday night meeting, it's like that's where all the young people went. That's where all the good-looking people went. That's where you kind of found a power greater than yourself to enable you to do the steps. You know what I mean? Some of the best conversations on steps is over coffee. You ever notice that? You impress each other on shit you know nothing about and how spiritual you are, followed by an amends and child support, but that's my story. Anyway. I'm sorry. Did I say all that out loud? So I'm nuts, but I'm the only one that don't know it because I'm hanging around with people that think like me. You ever hang around those people? So George started asking me questions about this stuff. He says, that was a great talk. You know how you get when someone tells you you have a great talk, you sit up a bit, and he says, can you explain to me a couple things in your talk? I said, sure. He says, what's an alcoholic? I said, what do you mean, what's an alcoholic? He says, what do they mean by we admitted we're powerless over alcohol? I went through the jails, institutions, stabbings, beatings, contract out all my life, getting kicked out of the club, getting kicked out of the church, getting on and on and on. Loaded up this whole horrific. He says, none of that makes you an alcoholic. He says, it makes you an asshole, but it doesn't make you an alcoholic. Then he walked away. Guess who I was thinking about all week? I was thinking about George. The nerve of him questioning me on this profound knowledge I have of stuff that I... So then I was at another meeting, he says, he walked up to me again. He says, that was great. And I sat up a bit. He says, what are the 3 pertinent ideas? He says, let's start off with something a little more simple. He says, where's the path that we took that they talk about and how it works? I showed him the directory and I said 90 meetings in 90 days. He says, where are the steps we took? I said, in the 12 and 12. I was in 4 12 and 12 studies. I've been in 12 and 12 studies for 11 previous years to that. None of it. I didn't realize what I was studying was Bill's experience of having done the steps. And I was trying to get Bill's experience by not doing what he did to get that experience. The 12 and 12 is a summary of essays built on an experience that Bill had going through this course of action for 13 years. How would I get the same experience that Bill had? I wouldn't be able to. But I talked in great lengths in trying to do that, but I'd never understood that because everybody told me the 12 and 12 was the steps. So then he started asking me, he says, what's step 2? And I started telling him about my belief and my relationship with God. He says, that's not step 2. He says, step 2 is the solution to step 1. He says, what's the solution? And I said, God. He says, that's not what it says. He says, but most people, when you hear people share in a meeting, when they talk about alcoholism, very few people, a lot of people will talk about the allergy. But very few people will talk about the malady surrounded the first drink, meaning the mental blank spot that centers in our mind that they talk about on page 37. And we'll kind of look at that right now when they talk. And that's the summary of what step 1 is, that I didn't know that after 11 years of being in and out of the fellowship. So what George ended up doing, he said to me, he says, I just came back, and he says, when are you coming to this big book study? I said, it's okay. I know what not to do now. And he says, how well is that working for you so far? And he started laughing, which I didn't like so much. And then he says, well, why don't you come and help us out next Tuesday night? Seeing you've been around a while, I said, I'll see you next Tuesday night, George. So I went there with the understanding that I was going to help them out. And what they ended up doing was saving my life by taking me through this information. So the basis of step 1 is, the summary of step 1 is, once you know you have the allergy, we know what the solution for that is what?
Stop drinking.
Don't drink and you don't trigger the allergy. So people who don't understand the book says, don't take the first one, you'll be okay. The book doesn't say that. The book says, don't take the first one, you won't trigger the allergy. But you can't not take the first one. And then you hear people say, and we don't understand what they mean by that. And you hear people say, I stay sober under any and all conditions. Well, we drink under any and all conditions. If we were able to stay sober under any and all conditions, we wouldn't need to do this. That gives you the impression that we are able to do something we weren't able to do before. How many people are able to stay sober here under any and all conditions? How many people get loaded here under any and all conditions? What sounds like a good idea? Drink. Nothing even has to be happening. Any day ending in a Y is a good day to have a drink. You ever notice that? A lot of people are just in between drinks here. They're not really in recovery. We're experiencing abstinence, and you're thinking you're experiencing recovery, right? And the pain you have in your own mind by that thing never shuts up. Until you find peace, that thing is going to take you out. And this is what they're going to talk about here is the second symptom in alcoholism that's described on page 23, but it's described here in regards to step 1. You may think,
hi, my name's Letitia. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
oh, let's back up here. So the history here is this guy just put an ounce of whiskey in his milk. And he thought it was a good idea. But previous to that, he knew he was never going to drink again. He was under the impression he was never going to drink again, and he had every reason in the world not to drink again. And he knew if he drank again, it would be over. It would be over. So he made that solemn oath he's never going to do it again. Who is he relying on? And if you were to give him a lie detector's test before going into this establishment, would he pass it? Yeah. 100. Would you have passed all those times that you said never again? Absolutely. So that's what they're saying. So they're trying to make a distinction between an illness and you. It's two different things. The illness, when an illness is governing you, then you're in conflict with it. That means you're kind of wondering, why do I keep doing this all the time? Why does this keep happening? I can't believe I'm doing this again. What's the matter with you? How many people have had those conversations here? Who are you talking to? You're talking to an illness that's governing your life that makes you powerless over what's happening. You're doing an act against your own will. That's what they mean, powerless. Powerless to change the event that's about to happen, and I can't see it happening. If I can't see, feel, and touch it as it's happening, that places me beyond human aid. But I want to feel, see, and touch it, because if I can do that, then who could I depend on? Me. I want to depend on me. That way I can phone somebody before it happens again. I can go to a meeting. I could call my sponsor. I could do something based on self-reliance to stop me from picking up again. And if you're able to be of that type, are you alcoholic of the hopeless variety? Will you need this solution if you're of that type? No. So that's why you need to find out what type you are. If you're unable to stay sober based on your own experience, now you have a problem. But the problem starts being because you just get feeling better. I got 30 days again, I got 60 days again, or I got a year again. The idea of ever relapsing is unthinkable. Then you don't understand step 1. You don't understand the nature of this illness and what they mean by a daily reprieve. A daily reprieve from what? From alcoholism. As long as alcoholism is governing my life, what's my fate? Who told us that? The doctor. He says this is repeated over and over and over. That's why it doesn't ask you, how do you feel about this? You ever know? Have they asked us that question yet? How do you feel about you staying sober? Well, I feel good. Oh, you're in trouble. Right? Because if you're new, you should be kind of terrified at the fact that you're probably not staying long and you're the only one that don't know it. Even our own literature says we doubt you're able to stay sober. Good luck to you, though. A lot of people don't like my laugh. But we like the idea, oh, now that I'm here, I'm in like an alcohol-free zone. Right, I'm in a meeting now. Oh, alcoholism is in the parking lot. Just meetings makers make it, to the next bar. No, that's not the solution to alcoholism. If I have an illness, that means no behavioral thing on my part can change it. So I need to understand what I'm up against. If I don't know what I'm up against, then it's going to take another series of events to get my attention and the knowledge or the experience of an AA member to 12-step me through this course of action or get conned into this like George did. George conned me through this, and then when I realized what I was up against in step 1, and same with the first 100 men and women, and since thousands have gone this in the realization of what this illness is called alcoholism and the nature of it and what it looks like and what we're up against, then it should give you that hopeless feeling of holy shit, I'm in trouble. So these are some of the things that are never talked about in meetings. We all talked about theology and how we keep ourselves sober. That's not step 1. Step 1 is on page 23. It says we have a malady that centers where? In our mind. So they talk about two different maladies. They talk about the spiritual malady. Have they mentioned that yet? No. Because it's not a part of step 1. That's in step 4. The malady that they talk about here is the illness in the mind that places us beyond human aid. And it's hard to understand that. That's why they talk about when we look back in our drinking histories, how well were we able to stop ourselves from picking up the blank spot? Were you able to keep yourself sober under any and all conditions from the first time you made an oath not to do it again? So that means if I have this symptom, what is the likelihood of it happening again? 100%. So the promise of step 1 is relapse. Not that you're going to stay sober. How many people like this step 1? How many people like the other step 1? Once you do it, you're okay. That's not step 1. It's like having dysentery. Anybody ever suffer from dysentery here? You know that diarrhea? I had to explain, what is dysentery? Someone said, diarrhea? Oh yeah, I know what that is. Just admit it. Does that change anything? No. How about acceptance? How about surrender? Whatever you do, don't let it go. Okay, so no letting go. Right? So it's one of those things, kind of like that, because after you feel, oh, I feel good. I think it's, you do that self-assessment. I think it's gone. That's what we do with alcoholism. I think it's gone. Shall we go dancing? No, I think I'll stick close to home just in case. How many people? But we don't treat alcoholism the same way because this thing you can't see, feel, and touch. And this is what they're going to describe here on page 37. When you fully understand this, then you understand the hopeless feature of step 1 and why step 2 is designed the way it is. So, whatever the precise definition.
Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity.
What do they call plain insanity? Taking the drink. The thinking process just before they picked up, the inability to stop themselves. Because an hour before that, they were going in. There was no thought of drinking. Anybody been there? And then suddenly, the thought crossed my mind, it'd be a good idea to put an ounce of whiskey and milk. How many people's had the suddenly here? Or how many people had the thought and it didn't escape? You couldn't stop, shake, or change it, and you picked up again. You're driven by it. How many people? So if you have that kind of thinking, you're in trouble. Right? That's why they say look back in your drinking history, and they don't ask you how you feel now about it because your assessment of the situation now is incorrect. You'll go, I don't feel it. I don't hear it. I don't think about it. The obsession has left, so that must mean I'm okay. When you talk like that, you don't understand step 1. You don't understand the nature of the beast you're up against. You've deluded yourself into believing that you're now neutrally free from relapse. The idea or that precedes that they talk about is suddenly. The obsession is in regards to thinking I can control and enjoy it. If you're still obsessing with the idea of thinking you can control and enjoy it, which is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker, not alcoholic, you haven't done step 1 yet. If you're still thinking there's got to be a way, then you haven't done step 1 yet. Does that kind of make sense? Once you've done step 1 and you know you can't get away with it, that there's no way I could safely take a drink in any form whatsoever, it triggers the allergy, and then all sorts of hell breaks loose. Anybody? All forms of consequences and agony and pain and suffering, right? Because if I can't control the amounts I drink, then I can't control the outcome. And the outcome is not very pretty if you're in here. Most of us are here because of consequences. Then we realize we can't stop the consequences because of the allergy. If I can't control the amounts I drink, then I can't control the outcome. Right? And so the only way to control the outcome is not to take that drink. But if I can't stop myself from taking a drink, now there's a problem. And this is what they're getting at here.
How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us.
Not some of us. Every single one of us. So that means if you don't understand that, you need to get someone to explain it to you. and you go back over your drinking history and see if you're a real alcoholic. Because most people, a lot of people can stay stopped based on their own experience for a period of time. Then they'll think their long-term sobriety will enable them to drink like other people. Anybody know people that are not here, whatever? But it's a form of insanity returning again, right? So the characteristic of every single one of us, what characteristic has been characterized in every single one of us? Can't drink. Well, no, that's kind of, how many people are here right now? 1, 2? Hello? Hello? How many people are here right now? Okay, so how many? 76. How many are present? How many people just got into thinking? How many people just locked into thinking? I see, here's how it started. And then it's kind of like, squirrel. It's like, let's not stay here. I'm not liking this stuff. Mind, hurry up, kick in. Okay, here, think about this. Oh, yeah, and then I got to go do this. I got to do that. La, 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 la. I'm not listening. Okay. Ready, here we go. How many people are back now? How many people? Okay, welcome back. Hope your trip was pleasant. You are now in a big book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a purpose for you being here, is to get educated on what this is about. Your participation would be greatly appreciated. Yeah? No? Okay. I didn't like this stuff either. Okay, so we'll go over it again.
You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us.
What has been characteristic of every single one of us? The malady, the mental state that precedes the relapse in the drinking, the suddenly, the inability to keep myself sober based on my own desire or my own story or my own meetings or my own treatment or everything that I've done has been unable to keep me sober. I keep relapsing. How many people? And then you notice when you come back from something you weren't able to accomplish the first time, you start telling us what you're going to do this time. Okay, and I don't remember anybody asking you. So what are you going to do this time? Well, a little more of what I was doing the last time. Didn't seem to work then, but if I really try at it this time, I'll just keep my cheeks a little tighter together, right? Like, you know, there's only one thing that's going to save you from yourself. That's Imodium. Anybody remember that old commercial with the guy, the donkey or whatever? The guy in the back goes, "You did take the Imodium, right?" The guy goes, "Yeah," and then he puts the suit on, and anyway, it's an old funny commercial. Okay, let's move on.
We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences.
Any reflectors here? I remember sitting with a 40-ounce here in front of me, leaving a meeting in Toronto, and I poured in a little glass, and I said, "Oh yeah, think it through." Any think it throughers here?
Yeah.
I got the 40-ounce there, and I'm sweating, and it's kind of like, oh, thing. And I start thinking of the most horrific things that could happen to me. Anybody? And then my other brain goes, "You better get a bigger glass. This is going to be painful." And that made sense to me. Right? And I got rid of the lid, and then let's get at her. Because there's nothing that could have stopped me from picking up. And so this is the test. Think back on your last relapse. If you think you could have done something different, then you haven't done step 1 yet. If you think something could have changed that event based on you, then you haven't done step 1 yet. Characteristic of every single one of us. What has been characteristic of every single one? The inability to keep ourselves sober based on our own story or our own experience around the humiliation, pain, and suffering of picking up drinking. Anybody like that here? Yeah. So if you got that kind of thinking, are you getting a little nervous now? Yeah. If you're feeling triggered, then you're beyond our help. Because if you know, like, it's kind of like you hear people, "Oh, I'm so triggered from that meeting." Fuck, come back when you're not so triggered. Because what happens is, when I was ready, the idea of ever using again wasn't a good idea. Anybody? Yeah. Anybody at that place? The idea of ever picking up again, like, there's no romance. The romance is gone. Huh? Hilda shows up. Okay. Anyways. Okay. No reflection. Okay, here we go.
But there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink.
Wow. But there was always that curious mental phenomenon. What is that? What does phenomenon mean?
Unexplainable.
Unexplainable event. You try explaining your shit to somebody that don't understand. My wife's a normie. I try explaining to her my 11 years of in and out. She don't understand. She goes, what's the matter with you? Something matter with you? That's what I'm trying to say. She goes, you're nuts? I said, yeah. But I'm the only one that don't know when it's happening. Because I think how many times I went out nonchalantly, come in here on all fours, begging for a change, begging. Just the mayhem in my life and the guilt, the shame and remorse, where feels like my chest is falling through my ass. Anybody been there? Yeah. It's like they're having tug of war in your soul. Never wanted to go back there. The look of my friends and family and people, relatives, like I remember those looks. Anybody? Do anything. Then what would bring me back to that mayhem that I'm trying to get away from? Why continuously? Because I'm dealing with a phenomenon, an unexplainable event that I'll never understand it. If you're trying to understand it or see the triggers around it or the behaviors, what leads to relapse and all that stuff, then you're probably not one of us if that stuff works. They're saying here, it's an unexplainable event that makes it an illness that happens for people like us. And all the behavioral modification around it won't stop you from doing it. You could leave the most sordid life, which I have, right? And then be in a church on Sunday trying to recreate your life and doing everything what you think is by the book, totally opposite of the life you're living and still relapse. How's that? Anybody try to behavioral modification into recovery here? Just watch out for these behaviors? Well, if it was a moral issue, then those behaviors would work, right? Then changing your behavior would work. But if it's an illness, doesn't matter what you do on your own resources, right? Because you're dealing with a phenomena, an unexplainable event. So how do you know if you have this phenomena or not? You need to look back. So when I look back at all the times I couldn't stay sober, I should start getting nervous. Anybody? Mm-hmm. Because that means what's coming. My past is showing me what my future looks like. It's like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. But there's other people that don't have that malady. They have the allergy, or the heavy drinkers are able to say stop. What's the only requirement for AA membership? And those people don't understand how we keep relapsing. And then it's the alcoholic in AA that starts feeling like shit for their inability to stay sober. AA is designed for relapsers. How many people find that surprising? It's designed for people who can't stay sober. Oh my God, really? Yes. Otherwise, it'd be a Burger King meeting with a little sip. Hey, did you get a milkshake with your meal? Right? We're designed for relapsers. People inability to stay sober based on their own resources. That's why you end up here. What's going on? So we explain alcoholism, a phenomena that happens where? That parallels with your sound thinking. That means there's a shift. You don't know when that shift happens. What does parallel mean? Side by side, and there's a shift. And when it's like this, you're reading a book, you're reading it, and then something happens and it shifts like this, and you're still reading it, but you don't know it's shifted. And it's taken over your thinking. You don't know it's taken over because you can't see, feel, and touch it. And then you have a drink in your hand, being AA, or something in your hand, wondering how it happened. Remember Bill pounded on the bar. How many people after they picked up, oh my God, what am I doing? Yeah. Right? That means you're beyond human aid. If you're asking yourself after what happened, now you're in trouble, right? Why wouldn't your brain tell you that beforehand? And how many people said maybe I shouldn't do it and did it anyways? So that's what they're talking about here. Oh, we're having fun now. Yeah. Only lost 2 people so far. Okay.
Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out.
Again, the insane idea referring to what?
Picking up a drink?
The malady that centers in my mind. They're not talking about the obsession. The obsession is gone. It's secondary. Because when you're having an obsession, you can do something about it. Anybody ever want to drink and they know they can't, so you went to a meeting or called somebody or something? That's what they mean by the obsession. It's a desire. I see, I want to do this, but I don't. I take corrective actions. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the insanity that precedes the first drink, which is different. I can't see, feel, and touch it. It's two different things. Bill talked about that in his story. For a year and a half, he nearly was driven back to drinking again. That means he's had the desire. But he found what saved the day was working with other people. We give the people the impression that once you're here, you don't think about it anymore, which is a lie. 30 years sober, there's been different times in my sobriety where I thought, man, I'd like to get loaded. Good and loaded. I mean, drooling loaded. I mean, talking to your feet loaded. Anybody been that loaded? Come on, left, right, left. But I know, like, it would be like just that one escape. But the truth is I couldn't. Right? And I was able to curb that by my spiritual condition that I was already in. If my spiritual condition wasn't sound, those situations would have took me out. Does that kind of make sense? Because I felt like a drink when things go really good. Things are going fantastic. My brain go, yeah, have one of those. I go, what the hell? Things going really shitty, have a drink. And nothing happening at all. My wife having a glass of wine on the coffee table. Part of my mind goes, drink it, drink it. The other part of my mind goes, shut up, shut up. So that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about when the sickness takes over, there's nothing I can do about it. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's the sickness. Anybody, you understand the difference what they're talking about here? Right? When this happens, what can you do about it?
Nothing.
Nothing. When you have a thought about it, what can you do about it? Everything. You could ignore it. You could take it to a meeting. You could just slough it off. Like anybody here prone to crazy thinking? I mean, just horrific shit that you go, whoa, where did that come from? I get that on a constant basis. I don't know why I get it, but I get thinking that I laugh and my wife goes, what are you laughing at? Nothing. I think of the most horrific shit. Like, I mean, like, we think different than other people. It's called the id, right? And what you don't is have attachment to. It's just free-floating ideas. So I was on a job site once, and I was trying to explain that we think different than normal people. The doctor talked about we're little maladjusted, full flight from reality, and downright mental defectives. We think different than other people, but that doesn't make you alcoholic. It just means our wiring's a little different from the damage we've caused ourselves. So an example, I go to my friend, I'm cutting on a big chop saw. I said, do you ever think about putting your finger in there? He goes, yeah. And then you kind of wonder what it feels like and you live it for a second. He says, yeah. I said, that's not right. He goes, really? I said, watch this. I call the guy. I said, Peter, come over here. Comes over. Yes, Tony. I said, you ever think about sticking your finger in the saw? He goes, what? He's horrified. And he keeps away from me for 2 days, right? we're just different, right? Anybody just different here? So that's why they really kind of get the difference between the insanity that you can't see, feel, and touch. It's a phenomena. The obsession, the idea that I like to, and then just the random thought of drink it, drink it. I don't know why that is, but I don't depend on me to keep me sober. Right? Because I'm in good, fit spiritual condition and alcoholism been removed from my life, that's no longer a factor for me because I don't keep myself sober. So I could sit in any situation. But if I'm not spiritually right, it doesn't matter where I sit. Does that kind of make sense? So, having fun. So, go ahead.
Next day, we would ask ourselves, in all earnestness and sincerity, how it could have happened. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like.
Anybody blame a person, place, or thing for their last relapse? Because you need to tie an excuse to it. The reason you tie an excuse to it, because then you still think you're in control and not beyond human aid. But could you have changed it? could you have stopped yourself? Whoa, that's a different question, right? So if you always have a reason for getting loaded, then you've never really done step one. Because there is no reason why we get loaded. It's an illness. We're being driven by something. As long as that's present in our life, what's our fate? This is repeated over and over. So now we're going to look at the solution here. So we're going to look at something that step 2 says what? So if you go to page 59, they talk about here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery, that who took? They took. So they're talking about a process that they went through, and they're breaking that down. So we just covered step 1 in great detail, have we not? Well, what have we missed? So it's very important. No, it's kind of important to really look, because there's a lot of people here that their lives depend on knowing that, right? So we've been sober a while, but I mean, for those who are struggling, who've been in and out, who haven't seemed to be able to kind of get this thing and kind of wondering what this is all about, now you understand why you won't be able to get sober and your story is going to stay the same. That's step 1. And once you identify with that, you kind of go, which is good, because you're no longer in denial of it. Most people think they're going to be okay. Then you haven't done step 1 again. If you know without a shadow of a doubt that you're going to relapse again, that puts you in a position of interest. It means, what am I going to do so my story isn't the same and my fate's going to be different? I need a different fate. I need a different story. But I can't create this based on the illness that I'm suffering from, because it's the illness that's determining my story. It's not me. It's not my desires, wants, and hopes. There's a conflict happening. I'm in conflict with myself and my life. Alcoholism is dictating my life for me. As long as that story is present, is my life going to get any better? How many people's lives here is getting worse, never better? How many people's relapse here is getting better? How many people are looking forward to the next one? I think that was funny the last time. Wait till I show up at the next Christmas party in March. Okay, so. Anyway, somebody has got that. Okay. So they're talking about their process here. So the first step says what? Go ahead.
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
We were. When you're doing it as a new person, you say you are. 2 different experiences. You don't have the same experience as the first 100 men and women. These people's lives isn't being governed by alcoholism anymore. Your life is being governed by alcoholism anymore. So you can't have the same conclusion that they have. You need to understand what made them powerless. You don't have the same experience of was being powerless. You still are, because you don't have this solution. Meetings is not the solution to alcoholism. Neither is acceptance, neither is surrender. And treatments designed to take you through a course of action that they put together to make you aware of a problem, to see what type of alcoholic or what type of problem you have, and then they send you here where we could 12-step you through a full course of action. You need to understand how these things are put together, right? And so what does the second step say?
Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
So they're saying they came to believe that a power greater than themselves could restore them to sanity. Do you know what they're talking about by looking on the wall?
No.
So what happens is, this is what happens in step 2, which has nothing to do with step 2, is everybody starts talking about their relationship with God in step 2, which has nothing to do with step 2. Nothing. Zipola. And then they start saying, is God as you understand him, which has nothing to do with step 2, zipola. Nothing. How many people are having a bit of conflict now? How many people? Because this is how we do as alcoholics. No, it says as God as we understand him. Where does it say that? It says this in step 3. Then who are they talking about? They're talking about them. They all have an understanding. Do you understand what they're talking about? No, but I want my own understanding. Good. When you come back, you could be a little more open-minded to see what we're talking about. Whose solution? How many people came up with step 1? How many people are sitting in the bar and said, what's the matter with you, Tony? It seems like I have a phenomenal craving. I can't control and enjoy my drink. And the methamphetamine doesn't help at all times. But I think I'm going to be okay tomorrow. How many people had that conversation in the bar? Hey, Tony, I thought you were quitting because you're on bail. Yeah, but it looks like I suffer from a subtle form of insanity. That makes it virtually impossible for me to quit on my own resources. And it seems like I'm prone to repeating this. There was no conversations like that anywhere I hung out. Anybody? You come here, you hear this stuff, go, whoa, 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 what? And it starts making good sense. That makes good sense. That's why it doesn't say step one as you understand it. Because we know how you understood it. Welcome back. So, that's why it doesn't say step two, it doesn't say as you understand it, does it? So what is step two? Step two is the solution to the problem that they presented. Is it not? So let's look at 27. We're making friends here. Let's kind of. I told you we're going to have fun here. Because if it was about your understanding of a God, then why would you need to be here? If it was about having an understanding of a relationship with God, what is the atheist and agnostic going to do? What's the true believer? How come he's not getting it? How come all these three people are having the same problem? The atheist, the agnostic, and true believer. Why can't they get sober? True believer already has God. Why can't he get sober? Because they don't understand what we're talking about in regards to the solution. You need to understand our explanation of the solution, then you can choose your own conception. What that means is if I put a lamp on the table here, everybody know what a lamp is with a light bulb? And then I was holding on to the cord here and I was clicking it on and off and I said, this thing don't work. How many people would go, you need to plug it in? Well, this is solar. but the odds are you'd say you'd have to plug it in. How many people would think that? You got to plug it in. Because we all have the same understanding. So once you explained it to somebody, this is how this lamp operates, is you need to plug it into a power source. Once you connect it, and there's a current running through there, and the light bulb works, when you turn it on, you get the power source that creates the lamp. Once you explain it, they go, I got you. And so when one of those elements are working, you go through the whole process to see what it is. You eliminate things why this lamp isn't working. But we all have the same understanding. That's why they say as we understood him in step 3 and 11. Right? They talk about we agnostics. All our members have tapped into an inner resource of strength. We have a way out which we could all agree. Now, I call it a power source. Some person calls it a current. Some person calls it electricity. Some people call it power or current. What you call it is secondary. Do you understand the functioning of it or the purpose of it? That's what step 2 is. Step 2 is, on page 27, explains it the best probably way I know how. Or probably missed it on page 27 where they talk about 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous visit us. Where was that? 37. Nope. Where am I here? No more, Fred. Here we go. 42. I knew I'd get it sooner or later. So this guy didn't, we're just having a conversation now. He thought relapse was unthinkable, like some of you were thinking. I'm never going to happen again. Like some of you were thinking, I've learned my lesson, I've surrendered, I've got this thing, I don't even think about it anymore. Relapse is unthinkable. That's this guy here. Then he relapses. He's back. He's a little coming back again. Again is the operative word. Again. Right? So now, 2 of the members, 2 people are visiting, are 12-stepping him. They're carrying this message to him. Let's go over what happens here.
2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time.
Meaning what? They're going to explain what they mean by that.
I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentally, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition.
What mentally, as he has exhibited? What is that? What mentally? Mentality. What mentality?
Spiritual condition.
No, not the spiritual condition. They're not. Have they talked about the spiritual condition yet? You're jumping ahead. They're talking about the malady that centers in the mind that makes you an alcoholic, having an alcoholic mind. If you have an alcoholic mind, what is the likelihood of you getting sober?
0.
0, right? And that's what they're saying here, right? Exhibiting this symptom. Go ahead.
They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself.
Meaning, the promise of step 1 is what? Relapse. That means it's going to come again. It doesn't matter if you agree or don't agree. It doesn't change the outcome of it. By agreeing to it, at least it puts you in a position of looking for a solution now. You can deny it all you want. Will it change it? No. You cannot admit it 100%. I don't admit it. Does it change it? No. You can admit it 100%. Yes, I have it. Does it change it? No. It doesn't change it. It's like getting out of the car and saying, holy shit, there's a flat tire. I've been ignoring it for the last 15 miles. I'm down to the rim now. Sooner or later, you can't ignore it. I was wondering what those sparks were. Denial only lasts so long, and then the evidence of your own life makes it paramount, makes it true. The symptoms of the consequences of your own existence gets your attention. You can't ignore it. If you could ignore your alcoholism, you wouldn't be here on a Friday night. How many people couldn't ignore it anymore? It was the consequences. So that's what they're saying here. What leads to the consequences is this insanity, right? Go ahead.
Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully.
What step is that? Step 2. Now they're talking about the solution to step 1. If you have this malady, this sickness that centers in your mind, what was the doctor said was the only thing that would help these types of people? You need to find out if you're this type of person or not. So when you go to We Agnostics, they talk about that here. So now they go through this in great lengths, right, about this solution. So, but if you go to We Agnostics here, and they break it down in such a way, what page are we looking at?
44.
Page 44. So, we're going to break this down in such a way. So we're looking at step 2 now, right? And what they mean by step 2 is it's a spiritual course of action. When taken, will do what? A psychic change or spiritual experience, because the doctor said if these people don't experience an entire psychic change back then, or spiritual experience, meaning the same thing, which they describe in the back of the book, is a change within our psyche sufficient enough for us to recover, what's our fate? We're doomed. So step 2 is the recipe to bring about this change necessary to recover from step 1. It's the idea that if I can get this thing based on the experience of those that went before me, remember Bill said? He says, it was only a matter of being willing that I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Nothing more was required of me of believing that there was something, and if I did what my friend did, I'd get what he got. And I could recover from this condition that's killing me. Step 2 is the solution to step 1. It's an idea that if I'm willing to incorporate these principles in my life, it'll create what? Having had a spiritual experience as the result. One specific reason for doing the steps. So what's the one specific reason for doing the steps? Spiritual experience or psychic change. If I don't have that, what's my fate? I'm going to drink again, because alcoholism is governing my life. Once I have a psychic change or spiritual experience, am I still have an alcoholic mind? No. Is alcoholism still governing my life? No. Have I recovered from the illness? Yes. Am I still afflicted with it? Yes. No. Do I still have the allergy? Yes. But am I suffering from alcoholism? No. Because if I'm suffering from alcoholism, what am I going to do? I'm going to drink. Because I have an alcoholic mind. So what needs to take place is a psychic change or spiritual experience is a change that happens where? In my psyche, sufficient enough for me to recover. The problem gets removed. It doesn't exist for me anymore. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we have is a daily Breathe. How many people are here? How many people are arguing a bit? How many people think she's the real? No. I can't believe you'd say all these things to these nice people. Okay, let's go over this.
All right, beginning of We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism.
What is the purpose of the preceding chapters? To learn about alcoholism is not finding yourself. It's not about getting in touch with yourself. It's not those kind of meetings. Sorry. In fact, stop touching yourself. No. Okay, so what they're talking about, I understand what alcoholism is now and what's governing my life. Now it makes sense why my life looks the way it is and why I keep repeating this thing over and over again, why my story has been relapse. Make sense? Where did I learn that? In the preceding chapters. I know what type of alcoholic I am now.
We hope that we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic.
Have they done that? So what they talk about is the real alcoholic is the one who's lost the ability to choose whether they'll drink or not. There's a lot of people that have a choice in AA. You hear it. I choose not to drink today. Then you're not one of us. I'll take 24 and pass it around. You're not one of us. I stay sober under any and all conditions. You're not one of us. Because if you're able to keep yourself sober under any and all conditions, then you're not afflicted with alcoholism. You're afflicted with a behavioral problem. I choose not to pick up today. Then you're not one of us. As long as I don't pick up, I'll be okay. No, you won't. Because your problem starts sober. Anybody? Mm-hmm. You ever notice when you stop using, you show up? Yeah. And some of your worst conversations are alone, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely.
That's quit entirely means you keep starting again, including weekends. 3 months is not a success story. Oh, I had 3 months before. You had abstinence before. You've never experienced recovery. A lot of people experience abstinence. They've never experienced recovery in the sense they talk about here. They've never had the experience. Because once you have the experience, no further explanation is necessary. You know what's driving you. You know why you need to do this. You know what keeps you motivated. Something changes from within that's unexplainably different. It's not up here. Most people that I've seen for years, they experience abstinence. They've never really experienced a psychic change or spiritual experience that happens through this process. They don't get lit up from the inside out. When everybody who's done this thing, the way it's lit out, gets lit up from the inside out, something happens to them where the people around them go, whoa, what's going on here? There's something going on here that's different about you. Most of us go around trying to convince people how much we changed. Anybody? I've really changed, honestly. You got $20? Sorry. Okay.
Or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic.
Which is the allergy, right?
If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
So what's the only solution to this thing for people like this? Or psychic, where do I find out what they mean by that? In the back of the book, right? And then they start saying here, what's our problem? Lack of power is our problem. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Why? Because lack of power is our dilemma. Why is it our dilemma? Because we can't create the change sufficient enough to recover from the illness that's driving us. We can't remove alcoholism from our lives on our own resources. We can't create the euphoria that we're looking for sufficient enough for us to be comfortable in our own skin. There's just something not right when we get sober. You ever notice there's something I can't put my finger on, but there's a frequency of, if it continues, I'm going to kill myself. I don't know if anybody's ever had that feeling. Oh, yeah. Just something, I don't know how else to explain it. Anybody get the, fucking gonna kill something? All right, I'm good. Happy sober, turning it over, letting it go. I'm so happy to be here. Got 30 days again. Yeah. If I don't stop on the bridge on the way home, it'll be good. Come on, how many people got that kind of nuts going on? We know you're nuts. Quit pretending. So what we try to do is get you on the right side of nuts. So they said that lack of power is our dilemma. It makes sense that I can't create the change within my side of myself to bring about that contentment, that peace, that joy, that it's okay. You know what? It's just okay. This attachment from all those things that are crippling me, to find that kind of, man, this is okay. But your house is on fire. It's okay. It's okay. I gave notice last week. It's okay. It's kind of like, okay. But you're crazy. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Because I see a change coming. I believe there's something new for me. That the people I'm following say that this is not going to be my story forever. That there's a new day coming. And it starts with today, with the belief that I can get the shit that these people are talking about. That I could have a new story, and it's called the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. Where and how am I to find this power that's going to give me the change that you people are talking about? Well, that's what this book is about. So the bare minimum in step 2 is, do I believe, or am I willing to believe that if I do this thing, that there is a power greater than myself, and I start taking this course of action, that I'll get what you guys got? Yes. The bare minimum am I willing to believe that there is something greater than me? And do I believe that it's within inside of myself that I could get access to it if I do this course of action that you people did? That's step 2. Step 2 is the idea that if I put this group of principles in place, that I can have this psychic change or spiritual experience, they'll save me from the fate of step 1. Step 3 is, do I want to continue on with this course of action? Step 11 is my relationship with a power greater than myself, not step 2. Step 11 is, not step 2. And then in step 11 is still, as we understand him, because we all talk about getting access to this inner resource of strength that some of our more religious members call a God consciousness. I call it a frequency. I call it getting tapped in. I call it a universal connection, that I'm just something, when I'm in that, it's like, wow, what I looked for and all that stuff that I used to do, all that stuff pales in comparison to what I get to experience. They call the fellowship of the Spirit. You see people walking around lit up as a result of it. I'm 30 years sober, and I'm getting more lit up about this stuff as time goes on, because I know what I was like when I got here. And what people presented me was this course of action. And they said, do you believe that there is something? My start was, yes, I know there's something. Can you show me? Can you lead me? Can you direct me? Can you just give me the strength to do this course of action? Because I come from an evangelical background. My belief, my understanding was killing me. There was no relationship. There was no connection. There was nothing. So here they're saying, tapping into the power that creates the change, that I can have the experience necessary to recover from an illness that's killing me. Once you experience it, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through, not somewhat thrilled. 90% of the people in the fellowship don't even look somewhat thrilled. Yeah, the promises are coming true. Yeah, I can't wait for tomorrow. If you want what I got. Yeah. Just let it go, turn it over. Yeah. Fucking acceptance. You ever hear people say, it's like, fucking drink already. No, sorry. And then you hear people say, I did this. And something, I found enough freedom for me that, you know what, it was cool today. I went the whole day without thinking about killing myself or killing somebody else. I was able to fall asleep. And I wasn't haunted by my past or haunted about what tomorrow may bring. I'm able to find peace in moments where I was never able to find none before. There's something inside of me that when I work with a new person, I get lit up. I get charged. I get something that's just unexplainably different. When I get tapped into this, I notice everything about everything. And when I'm not tapped into this, it gets dark really fast. And I know the difference between those two things. And the only person that don't know the two things is the person that haven't experienced it. That's why you need to experience. Once you experience it, you don't need to be explained when you're away from it. You know when you're away from it because you're not right, and you know what will get you right because you've experienced what right feels like for you. And this is the course of action that we practice on a daily basis to get right. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious conduct. That means I'm connected to this source in me. I'm improving something that's available to me. How do I get this? That's what this book is about. What's step 2? It's not about your relationship with God. It's the solution that we formulated, put together in this basic text to allow you to incorporate within your life, allowing you to get access to this power that will create the change sufficient enough for you to recover it. Other than that, it's pretty simple.
And help others. Thank you, Tony.
There'll be a test next week.
Oh, yeah.
So what makes this all possible? God. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You're done.